All right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. I'm Raf Diallo, joined by RTÉ Sport Online's Jim McMahon, and we're also joined by Graham Gartland and Paul Corry, who are back on the podcast. So I have an interview with Katie McCabe coming up just in a little while, and then we're going to be looking back at the League of Ireland weekend, and also we'll be talking about the small matter of Manchester City versus Liverpool, who are both in Champions League action, but there is the small matter of their game, which is probably going to be title deciding. And Jim, before we came on, I think you were talking about other drama before we get to the World Cup draw that you were going to be involved in, and it's more literal than the draw itself.
Yeah, Raf, this week in the Teachers Club, which is a venue on Parnell Square in Dublin, some of you may know it, it's opposite quite close to the Rotunda Hospital, where many's a drama has been played out since time began. No, I'm just doing it's a one-act play for a theatre company called Sweet and Dry. So I haven't been involved since before COVID. So it's just something that I do in my spare time, and you get a great buzz out of it. There's always good people that you're involved with, and hopefully it's something that we can give to the masses out there for people to enjoy. No doubt people will be wearing masks probably in the audience. It's quite a confined space, but it's just good to be back. Just like going to games, going to rock concerts, going to music, going to whatever people are into, hill walking, whatever. It's just good that there's some sense of normality that is back now, even though COVID cases are high. But just looking forward to it for the week.
And just if you do win an award for this play, like if Graham Gartland was to kind of make a joke at your expense, you're not going to turn around and kind of let the hands go loose.
No, I think if Graham has given me the award, I think I'll have my hands tied behind my back, and my head will be restrained as well in case, so I won't be able to give any kind of a headbutt or any kind of action towards him at all.
Good to hear from Graham's perspective there anyway. Without further ado, the World Cup draw, and there's no groups of death or anything, and obviously, this is the last draw of its kind because of the expansion to 48 teams for the 2026 tournament. I suppose, Graham, looking at it, and I suppose England might be one to look at when we're talking about no groups of death. On paper, it looks relatively easy, but then when you actually drill down, England have been in relatively easy groups before and somehow kind of got unstuck. So this one, it looks trickier than the way it's kind of printed.
Yeah, it probably is, but I think with the way England have performed, I think any group they go into it in the last, obviously with the last performance in the Euros, they're probably confident they're going to come out of it. I think that's probably where they're at as a nation now, is that they feel that they should go into the last 8 of most tournaments. And with all due respect to England, they should, with they've like you said, the league that they have and the structures that are in place over in that country and the facilities they have. They're one of the biggest football nations in the world, so they should be going into the last 4 and the last 8 of tournaments regularly. And then, like you said, I wouldn't say it's the look of the draw, but it's how you perform in the big matches, and that's something that they probably need to learn to do, is that when they get to these Final Fours or even the final, that they actually perform in the game. I think they'd probably be disappointed that when they got to the final against Italy, they didn't perform. I think they'll get out of the group. I think most of the big teams will get out of the group. I can't see anybody. Spain, Germany, Japan, I don't even know who's going to go into the playoff. There's one other team due to go into that one. That's the only one that you maybe see.
That's going to be New Zealand or Costa Rica. So I think that's probably done and dusted in that way.
Yeah, so then you're looking at someone who wins the group is going to either play Spain or Germany, and that's a tough next game. So you might see a big team going out just after the group stages. But other than that, it looks like most of the top teams will come through, which is, to be honest, that's probably what the tournament wants. You want to see the top teams playing each other when there's something at stake in the final stages.
And Paul, in terms of good games that we can at least be guaranteed, Spain, Germany, it doesn't really get bigger than that.
Yeah, that should be a mouth-watering game. And if you remember back, I think it was Germany played Hungary in the Euros, where everything was on the line, and it came down to the last game in the group, and it threw up a funny performance. So yeah, I mean, like Graham has said, when you look at it on paper, the majority of the top teams should go through. But even if you look, Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland, and Cameroon in Group G, that should be a fairly tight type of group. Brazil have obviously done very well in qualifying. Serbia were in our own group and finished ahead of Portugal. So you look at their top two, Mitrovic and Vlahovic, somebody that you can't rule out in that group. And Switzerland, by and large, have been pretty efficient with qualifying for these tournaments, similar to a Poland in that sense, but seem to maybe falter or fail when they get to the group stages. So yeah, listen, there's some big games and there will be some results that will surprise people, and there might be a top team who maybe drops out of the group stages. But looking at it on paper, it is set up for those top seeds really to progress into the last 16.
And Jim, last week we had Stephen Elliott on, and he was making the point that just with the heat that is expected in Qatar, even in November and December, that it adds a premium for the likes of Brazil and Argentina. But if we look back, I think it's not since 2000, it's 20 years essentially this year since a non-European team won the World Cup. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to change. The one thing about a lot of the players from Brazil and Argentina, they're not necessarily, you don't get that kind of club mentality because they're all kind of spread around Europe. So it makes it a little bit harder for them, albeit both of those teams are in good form.
Yeah, I think you could say, Raf, that for the 2022 renewal, that it's probably likely that a team from Europe is going to win it again. The only caveat I'll bring into this World Cup, Raf, is that the players from all across the globe will have stopped playing in their respective leagues, I think 8-9 days before the tournament starts. So what bearing that's going to have, I don't even know they'll get to play any friendlies before the tournament starts. But I can see beyond just thinking about in terms of the groups, there's a possibility that England could play France at the quarterfinal stage. So that's one match. So a big hitter could go out at that stage. But I think this is a very unusual World Cup. I mean, the fact that the teams aren't having any kind of sufficient prep before it starts, that probably has never happened before, because normally teams get about a 3-week break between the end of the season and the start of a tournament. So there are things about this World Cup where it's been held in Qatar and all that it kind of feels, as some people it's saying, it's a World Cup, but there's something not right about it still at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And it's the last World Cup of its kind because it's the last one that we'll have these 8 groups of 4 in. But to answer your question, I mean, you could probably narrow it down. Well, I can't say narrow it down, Raf, but I think there's about half a dozen teams that are capable of winning that World Cup. I'd put Argentina probably ahead of Brazil at the moment as the best team from outside Europe to win it.
Yeah, I suppose just on that, Graham, I don't know if the draw will have changed your view on who you might have thought ahead of time was going to win it, but who is your tip? And I know we're more than 6 months out, but there's no harm in kind of having a look ahead that way.
Like, yes, I think what Jim makes a very good point there. Like, there's no preparation going into it in terms of getting the squads together on the from outside of it. You don't know what's going to happen and what injuries are going to come up going into it now, because they're playing right up to the start of the tournament. It's hard to see France. It's a tough question because I'm looking at Spain, Germany, France, Belgium, Argentina. I don't know. I really don't know what to call this. What?
You can't pick them all.
No, but I'm trying to say is, like, say Spain, Germany, Belgium, right? They're the 3 European teams with France that I think have a chance. And then Argentina outside of that. But whether Belgium are going all in on this one because it's the last of their golden generation to try and win something, that probably feel like it's a last chance for that group of players. So, but I'm going to go with Spain, actually. I'm going to go with the weather on this one in Spain, the fact that they keep the ball so well and will just pass the ball to death. I probably think Spain might have a resurgence and go and win it.
Yeah, they had a good Euros as well. Paul, did the draw change the way you see this tournament going in terms of the likely winner or likely finalists?
It's very hard to predict in the sense that you don't know what sort of form players or teams are going to be coming into this in 6 months' time. I tend to agree with Gartz. I think Spain have a really good chance. I thought they were super in the Euros, and there's probably a number of players within that squad who will be much the better of the 12 months more experience. If you think the likes of a Pedri or even a Gavi who could step up, still young and very much in the early stages of their career, but the type of player could really step up at this sort of stage. And always France, to be honest with you, I think when you look at the squads on paper and you look at the 11, with Mbappe up top. Giroud seems to find form anytime he puts on a French jersey, whether they go Benzema, Griezmann. They've got so many options in the final third of the pitch that they'll tend to win games. And they were, you know, if you take away their performance, I think it was Switzerland who knocked them out in the European Championships and penalties. I think they had about a 15, 20-minute period where they just threw the game away and let Switzerland back into it. Pogba losing the ball in a terrible position, let Switzerland back into it. Bar that, they were pretty good in the tournament. And I think when you look at the quality they have all around the pitch, Kante in the middle with Pogba tends to work quite well. Varane seems to play with confidence when he plays in that French jersey. They have so many options and so many different players that they can plug into the different positions if they were to leave one out. So I think for me, one of those two teams, going with Garza as well, that keep the ball so well in that sort of weather, you would have to fancy one of them.
Yeah, I think your point about Varane playing with confidence in the French jersey, I think everybody plays with confidence when they're not wearing a Man United jersey at the moment, the way things are. Sorry, Jim, go on.
Sorry, Raf, are we ruling England out then, folks? I mean, are they not part of the 4 or 5 countries that you mentioned there, Spain, Belgium, Germany, France? I mean, England probably don't have that much to improve on from the Euros to go on and win this thing.
I just think they don't perform when the big game comes around. I think there's a lack of a performance where they go, right, we're really going to seize the moment here. And I've always just thought they've lacked that. And it's something that they've probably lacked since they last won a tournament, that ability to perform on the biggest game. You've seen in the last, it's like Paul makes a good point, is that Spain performed really well and got knocked out, but the performance in the game against Italy was really good. France's performance for 70% of the game against Switzerland was really good. But with England, they're getting knocked out, but they're not even performing. You're not thinking they're unlucky to lose the game here. I didn't think they were unlucky to lose the game against Italy. Didn't think they were lucky to lose the game against Croatia. I thought they didn't perform on the day. And that's my worry, is that when it comes down to the game, they're not putting in a performance. There's a bit of a fearfulness about them when it gets to the deciding game, whatever that one might be for them.
I think on that as well, particularly with the European Championships, they had a very favourable draw to get to the final. I know they beat Germany in the round of 16, but I think then they went on to play Denmark and Ukraine on route to the final. So
every game was at home, Paul.
Yeah, exactly. And even in the World Cup, I think they had, it was Sweden, and then they maybe played.
They played Colombia in the last.
Colombia,
yeah.
Sweden.
So they probably haven't beaten that top bracket that we speak of when you talk about countries who are in contention. If that's probably the final piece of the jigsaw that they look at, that they need to beat the likes of a France. And if you're going to win a competition like this, you have to beat that type of opposition. And that would be the one question that I would still have around that England side.
Yeah, and I think the other thing as well, they've never really produced in recent times a proper deep lying playmaker. Like, you look at the Italy team that beat them, had Jorginho and Verratti, who are like some of the best in the world in that position. And then also Croatia, I mean, who's better than Luka Modric at his peak? I mean, it's not too many. And they have Rice and Phillips, great midfielders in their own right, but very different in that sense. So I don't like that thing, the point you were making about them trying to keep the ball, I think is probably valid in that they don't really have that. That's not really their style. In any case, so we'll see how all these teams go anyway. But we're hopefully going to see the Republic of Ireland in the Women's World Cup the following year, and Katie McCabe is the captain. I have been speaking to her. She's a Dove Self-Esteem Project ambassador for 2022. So we talked about club and international matters, and also the Dove Self-Esteem Project as well. All right, Katie McCabe, thanks a million for joining me. I know you're kind of at the busy start of an international break now, and obviously an important game for Ireland coming up next week, or next Tuesday to be specific, but you're the Dove Self-Esteem Project Ambassador for 2022. So maybe just to start on that, what prompted you to get involved, and why do you feel this issue is so important?
Yeah, look, I think like it's the second year running now, the Dove Self-Esteem Project, and for me to come up or kind of team up with Dove, I think is really exciting. I suppose the campaign background is kind of the aim of helping young people in Ireland reach their full potential and like provide supportive resources to kind of help foster that positive body image and self-esteem from an early age. And they've conducted kind of different research within that, and the research is it's quite staggering really. Like, you hear of like 6 in 10 boys and 9 in 10 girls kind of, they don't have a high body self-esteem. So for Dove to kind of, for me to team up with Dove is really exciting to try obviously progress that.
Yeah, you mentioned the staggering numbers, and I have some of it in front of me here. So from Dove's research, like 70% of girls and 62% of boys, and this is the 10 to 17 age bracket, haven't attended an extracurricular activity because of the way they feel about their appearance. That's quite stark. And then, like, I suppose from your point of view, you found sport, so it's an outlet for a lot of people, but what do you feel can be done maybe to encourage people to maybe go down that pathway, or even if it isn't sport, maybe something else like, musical instruments, all that other kind of stuff, or drama, or whatever it is?
Yeah, like for me, I think growing up, obviously through my own personal experience, like I obviously loved sport, and that's what I was really passionate about. So I would always kind of join those extracurricular activities when it came to sport. And for me, it was about, at the time, especially in secondary school, encouraging people that maybe were interested in music or art to kind of try football, because they might like it. Look, you don't have to be the best at it, but you might enjoy that kind of the social aspect of it, the team camaraderie, the changing room. You know what I mean? Like there's so much more to just playing the game. Working in a team, winning together, losing together, all that kind of dynamic as well. And obviously that's something why I'm still playing football is because I love that. That part of it, kind of sharing those experiences with people. But for me, it was always about encouraging other people that if they're not as comfortable with it, just to try it, because you might find one thing you like about it.
Yeah, and it's taken you on adventures from captaining your country to winning trophies for your club, Arsenal. And I was just looking at the Super League table at the moment. And I don't know, are you the type of player that actually look, because, you interview people over the years, and there are some people who will say like they don't look at the table, but I don't know, it would be hard for you to miss it, I guess, because it's just how close yourselves and Chelsea are at the moment. Like, how tense is it? Like within, like, I suppose you can only speak about the Arsenal side, but is it a case of you're just having to focus on yourselves and kind of ignore Chelsea?
Yeah, look, I think that's what we always do. We can only kind of control what we can control, and that's how we perform and train every day. As you said, you touched on the close title race, and to be honest, I don't kind of pay much attention, because when you're playing for Arsenal and I'm wearing that red shirt, the pressure is on every game, no matter what's at stake, to win those matches. That's the history of the club. It's the culture that's been embedded into the club, and you feel that weight when you put the shirt on. So it's always it's always very proud for me putting on the shirt and representing the club when I can. And you're always going to be competing for trophies every season, and that's what's important to us.
Yeah, and you have an FA Cup game against Chelsea as well coming up after the international
semi-final,
break. Yeah, semi-final. And with the way and I remember watching the last final and how it ended, does it sort of play into your mind? Does revenge, do emotions like that come into it? Or is it more just, you're that big a club that it's just another game and you just have to take it on its own merits?
Yeah, look, we were obviously extremely hurt. It's never nice losing a final, especially in the manner we did. But we don't have to prove anything to anyone else. It's proving it to ourselves. We know we're capable. We know we can perform at an elite level. We've got the players to do so, and the staff to help us get there too. So it's all about just kind of concentrate on what we can do, and how best to prepare ourselves for then. But I'm not actually looking too far ahead to that one yet, because obviously I've got a big game against Sweden beforehand, which that's my full focus right now. So I'm not looking too much into the semi-final at the minute.
Yeah, but I think you can afford to look back slightly, because I'm just going to play you the clip now of your goal against Liverpool, because I know Elisa Fallon, who was on co-commentary on the day because it was on the RTÉ News channel, enjoyed it. But obviously you had the bird's eye view of this. But let's give you the excuse of watching it back.
Catley will take it for Arsenal. Lots of height in that Arsenal penalty area, or the Liverpool penalty area. Catley takes it, gets it back from Little, better angle to cross. Sousa, a big target. Leanne Kiernan heads it out. Oh, and there's the second goal. That's an incredible strike from Katie McCabe. We mentioned earlier on that she is scoring spectacular goals. Well, there's another one in the 31st minute. Katie McCabe with an absolute screamer. You would have to say it was coming, but what a moment for Katie McCabe, and they lead 2-0 and they're on their way.
What a sensational strike from Katie McCabe. Ball comes in, headed clear. She just strikes it on the volley. I mean, what technique. Any player in the world to take on that shot and hit it with that speed, venom, power and accuracy.
So I know you said,
big head now.
I know I heard your voice there saying you don't like watching yourself back, but like, I mean, surely like back goal, like, did you watch it back, and would you generally do that at least with goals of that quality?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's always nice to score goals of that caliber. Yeah, they don't come by every week, so when you do, I think it's important you enjoy those moments with your teammates. Obviously, you could see I was hugging my teammates. Obviously, just kind of happy to win the game, to be honest, and happy it went in and not into the stand. We're actually giving Leanne Kiernan a bit of stick because she was the one that headed it out to me. Obviously, she's my Irish teammate as well, so. Lee Fahey kind of said to me after the game too, would you not have left that for another day? So now it was good crack, obviously, between the Irish girls. But look, even Liverpool, obviously, they've just won the WSL2 and they'll be up in WSL with us next season, and it'll be obviously more Irish players in the league as well. Great club, which Liverpool is. So it's going to be an exciting year next year.
Yeah, and also I was watching Arsenal in the Champions League last week, just the second leg against Wolfsburg. So commiserations on that. But I think in other ways, in terms of just how tight, tactical, and tense it was, I presume it's good preparation for the Sweden game in a way, because mentally you're so attuned in a game like that, and it's just kind of staying on that level. Yeah,
look, in those games like quarterfinals of Champions League, like, it's a game of fine margins. You need to be disciplined in what you have to do defensively and going forward to execute the game plan. And unfortunately for us, obviously Wolfsburg enjoyed their day and obviously progressed through to the semi-finals. But it's good learnings from us. We can only kind of, as I said, learn from it and grow as a team. And you have to experience those low moments together as a team to progress into the high moments. So. As I said, lots of learnings from it. And from me individually, obviously, it'll be really important to kind of bring that level of game up into the Sweden game next week.
Yeah, because 2021 ended extremely well. The 11-0 win against Georgia and Tala, which was just brilliant from an Irish perspective. But you know, there's a huge gap then to the Sweden game, but fortunately in between there's the Pinatar Cup and also there's the training camps you would have had. So how crucial was the Pinatar Cup in terms of getting the squad back together and getting a bit more momentum back?
So important, I think, for us to have those 10 days together as a team. Like, obviously we had the 3 games. It's a real opportunity for players that maybe don't get minutes in quite a few games, when it's like obviously qualifying games, for them to play then at these tournaments and kind of get that international experience. And I feel like we made some good steps in the camp to kind of really set us up for where we need to be for next week against Sweden.
And from Vera Pauw's preparation, is it more about tweaking and kind of honing what you've done before, or do you kind of work on alternative game plans as well? Because obviously you'll have to ask her that. Yeah, but I suppose, well, actually, fair point. But I suppose from your perspective anyway, in terms of what you work on, do you look at maybe alternative game plans sometimes, just because you've had the first block of games, and then obviously teams kind of will look at each other and kind of work out maybe particular game plans that have worked before?
Yeah, look, obviously we know Sweden and what they represent. They're the second best team in the world, so we know it's going to be a difficult task to go out there. They're playing in front of their home crowds. You can say everything's kind of stacked against us, to be honest, but we know the qualities we have within our team, and also we know their strengths too. And for us on Tuesday night, it'll be about nullifying their strengths and really trying to show what we can do as well going forward.
Yeah, and some people have been describing it sort of as a free hit for Ireland. I kind of doubted that you would look at it that way. Obviously, you play for a club like Arsenal where there's pressure every week to win. And obviously the standards that have improved in terms of the Ireland team now and the results you've picked up, can you really look at it as a free hit? I know, as you've said, Sweden are the second best team in the world, and you know they've won loads over the years. But if for Ireland to get where we want to be, is it a case of just kind of not thinking in terms of free hits?
Well, ultimately, where we want to be is at a major tournament, and fundamentally, to get to a major tournament, we need to have these big results against these big teams, whether that's a win or a draw. You need to get those types of results, and we don't go out to lose games at all. We go out to compete. We're a very, very good side on our day, and when we stick to our strengths, and we've got some really exciting players within our team, really experienced players in our team that have the experience of playing against those high ranked opposition. Netherlands, Germany, USA's, Spain, you name it, we've played against them. So we have that experience, and it's about controlling what we've to control on Tuesday night, and obviously doing it to the best of our ability.
And how big a blow is losing Savannah McCarthy, because she'd worked her way into the squad and she's been impressive in that defence, and unfortunately just the knee injury happened at an inopportune time for herself and also for the Irish squad.
Yeah, look, I'm gutted for Sav. She's come back into the team and done really, really well. I've obviously been playing beside her. She's been playing the left side of the three, and I've played the left wing back role. And we know what she can bring. She's solid as a rock. She'd run through a brick wall, especially for our country and our teammates as well. And we're gutted to lose her. As I'm sure Galway are too. She was paramount for their team in the Women's National League, and we can only support her and wish her the best in her recovery. And obviously we'll be here to help her in any way we can as teammates.
Yeah, as you said, the Pinatar Cup, in terms of adding to squad depth, and if there are injuries, I think Dan Caldwell's also going to be missing as well. But to bring in new players, so Abby Larkin, who was chatting to the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and Chloe Mustaki, who, after everything she's come through to win her first cap and now to work her way into the squad, is brilliant. But what have you made of the newcomers and how they've adapted to the squad?
Yeah, look, I think obviously I've played with Chloe before at underage level, so I know I know what she brings to the team on and off the pitch, her mentality, how she works. So I think it's great for us to have her back in the squad now again. And obviously we spoke about Sav's injury. Obviously through injury, then there's opportunities for other people. And I think Chloe done a terrific job back in Pinatar Cup to really deserve our place then again in the squads. Obviously with like Abby Larkin, I know she's quite young, so for her it's just about continuing to get the head down, keep working, and then enjoy the moments when she gets called up, and enjoy learning from the experience that she's surrounded by. Because if I was a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid in a senior setup like that, I'd be absorbing everything I can and asking questions. So I think it's just important for her to kind of keep the head down and keep working.
Yeah, and over the last few weeks on the podcast, I've been speaking to Courtney Brosnan and Diane Caldwell, obviously your teammates, and I always ask the same question. I suppose this is the final point I'll put to you. It's, in the Euro qualifiers, you came quite close and just missed out, and now fast forward, you're in a kind of similar position at the halfway point where you're in a really good position in terms of potentially getting into a playoff position. What do you feel you learned from that previous campaign that you feel this time will give you an edge and you'll be able to secure that second place?
Well, I always kind of say you never lose, you learn. And with that campaign, obviously we were all heartbroken. We felt we really could have got to that first major tournament at the time, and obviously the game out in Ukraine didn't go our way, but it wouldn't have been won or lost there. Obviously we had slipped up in previous games, which was obviously unfortunate, but for us, that obviously going into this campaign, we've got 4 games left, and we need to kind of concentrate on each one at an absolute maximum, and try obviously nullify the opposition as much as we can, and really show our strengths on the night. Going forward, it's obviously Sweden, Georgia, and then the doubleheader at home as well. So we just need to make sure we're putting ourselves in a position for at least a playoff come September.
Yeah, and best of luck with that. Obviously, we're all going to be behind you. So that's on 12th of April against Sweden. So Katie McCabe, thanks a million for taking the time, and enjoy your busy week.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.
All right, that is Ireland captain Katie McCabe. Ireland back in qualification action against Sweden on the 12th of April, and hopefully, given that the Irish team are currently second in the group, that they're able to continue what they did in the first half of the campaign in this second half and go on to qualify and reach the playoffs. But that'll be starting with Sweden on the 12th of April. But anyway, first off now, we've got the Premier Division results in the SSE Airtricity League. It's time to talk domestic matters. At the weekend, Shamrock Rovers won 3-0 at Finn Harps. Dundalk beat UCD 2-0. Bohemians lost 2-1 at home to Derry City. Sligo Rovers were beaten by Shelburne at home. And St. Patrick's Athletic and Drogheda United drew 1-1. So starting off with Bohemians and Derry City. So James Akintunde with a stoppage time winner. That's the third stoppage time winner for Derry City this season. And after wins over Shamrock Rovers and Pats. And that is probably a show of mental strength. But before we get to that, let's listen to Rory Higgins first, see what he had to say after the game.
Congratulations, yet another late winner.
Yeah, late winner, but I felt it was deserved. I felt the first half was quite even. Second half, we were relentless, and I think we deserved our 3 points.
It says a lot about the character of the team to keep going to the well, though, to get the winner.
Yeah, character, character, fitness, togetherness, quality. So we've, I think, over the course of the game, we've definitely deserved the 3 points.
It took you a while to get going, mind you, because Bulls were very good, especially in that opening 25 minutes when they got in front.
I didn't feel there was an awful lot in it. They had shots from distance. Brian made a couple of good saves. They've got a great goal, but we clawed our way into the game, sort of the back end of the first half. We got momentum in the game, and we continued it for the next 45 minutes and pinned them in, and they struggled to get out of their half, and we've deserved to win the game, there's no doubt about that.
And just a word on James Akintunde, who got the decisive goal.
He got a great goal for us here last year, and sometimes players have clubs that they score goals against, and James scored. I think the 3 substitutions made a massive impact on the game, and delighted for James because he's a special person.
And Rory, there's no let up, the turnaround is very quick. UCD, you're back in Dublin again on Monday.
Back in Dublin again on Monday. It'd be interesting if a Dublin club had to go Friday, Monday, the Harps and Derry. That would be an interesting one, but we're used to it as part of what we do, and I think it's even more special when you can get on the road with 3 points and have a laugh in the bus on the way home.
Well done tonight.
Thank you.
That is Derry City manager Rory Higgins speaking to Adrian Eames after the 2-1 win at Bohemians. Graham, I suppose in regards to Derry City, and as I said before we played the clip, that's 3 stoppage time winners that they've scored, and that's a quality. We were talking about Shamrock Rovers last season. It kind of speaks to the ability they have in the squad, but also more importantly, the sort of resilience and I suppose the mental strength they have.
And the determination to just not be happy to settle for a draw, even though they're away from home. I think that gives them, you can tell that they're really sort of buying into what Rory has this year, and you feel that they can have a title push. And when you feel that early with a group, you feel like every game is you have to win. Derry probably do feel like that because they know that they're in a title fight with Shamrock Rovers, and so that they're going to push to the last minute of every game to make sure that they get wins, because like you said, they're probably walking in looking to see how Rovers get on, because that's what happens when you're challenging for titles. You're always constantly trying to outdo the other team that you're up against. But they've shown great character, and it's great that he touches on that from his players, that, you know, really good character to make sure they come back and stay in the games. But they've been really good this year. Not only that, they've lost 2 of their really good players as well. Duffy broke his leg, and it's Hark in the midfield got a bad ACL injury as well. So they're 2 big players for them, and it just shows you the togetherness and the camaraderie in the squad that they're able to keep getting last minute winners.
And Paul, just on Rory Higgins himself, I think we've kind of touched on it previously, but he just remains quite level-headed, which makes it, I suppose, added with that character. And even despite the fact that they're top of the table, they're not, I suppose they're not going to lose the run of themselves necessarily. And it's not a case of like they're putting pressure on themselves to win this title, because I think they're looking at the longer term project of next season and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing it very well, and that's probably what you'd expect, that he'd want to deflect any sort of pressure away from his players. But I think whether it's in their play or just in Rory and how he speaks, there seems to be a real sort of calmness and confidence about what it is they're doing up there. And that probably speaks of how Rory would have played the game. You know, they're very expressive. They like to get the ball down, make the pitch nice and wide. And they've made the Brandywell now a difficult place to go. I think when you look then at the players that they've added to what it is they'd built towards the end of last season, they've got a much stronger squad and they're in a much better position than they were last year. And that's probably evidenced in the 3 players that they brought on the other day. McElhenney came on the bench, Akintunde came off the bench, and Matty Smith came on. So, you know, that's real strength and depth. And that helps when, you know, maybe you're in a tight game like that the other night and you're able to bring 3 quality players onto the pitch and give you maybe an extra gear. And those types of results that you touched on, that gives you confidence, that builds momentum, and it gives belief throughout the squad. So a really strong start to the season. It probably doesn't surprise me because I thought what he was building there towards the end of last season gave you enough kind of indicators that they would be a team that will progress. And they've obviously had investments. They've added players to that squad. And, you know, it's been a really impressive start to the season for Derry.
Yeah, and Bohemians, on the other hand, under a little bit of pressure, but they have an opportunity to bounce back pretty quickly with a rearranged game against Sligo Rovers. Let's just listen to their manager, Keith Long.
Keith, how frustrating is that? Because anytime you concede a goal in injury time like that, it's a real blow, isn't it? A body blow.
Yeah, it undoes all the good work that went on previously in the game, particularly in the first half. Yeah, we've conceded 2 bad goals second half. Don't defend the back post well enough for the first goal, and then the concession of a cheap free kick. And then we don't do our jobs as set piece. We don't pick up, and yeah, we're suffering a little bit tonight. There's no doubt about that. We probably should get something out of the game. I thought there was lots of positives in the first half performance. We wanted to come out in the second half and get another goal. We didn't quite function as cohesively in the second half as we did in the first half. So, but basic errors are costing us just at this minute. I think you know, it's too easy for us to concede goals at this moment in time, and obviously that's a collective responsibility, but ultimately it's mine as manager. You know, I put the team, I select the team, I recruit the players, and you know, it's we're working extremely hard to try and get things right. Unfortunately tonight we didn't hang on for a point which I felt we would have deserved overall, and listen, you know, we got to get ourselves ready for Sligo on Tuesday.
How hard is it when maybe things aren't going for you, because you have so many draws so far this season? Just the one win, you played very well in the first half, got a terrific goal, lovely move and a great finish from Liam Burt as well. But then the second half, obviously Derry came on strong. They're a very good side, and you'd expect them to have a spell of dominance as well. But is there a sense of frustration the way the season has started because you had to bring in so many new players as well?
Yeah, well listen, on the game tonight we need to be stronger. You need to defend, do the basics of the game well, defend crosses into your box, you know, stay disciplined in terms of your defensive responsibilities, deal with the basics well, and we're not quite doing that at this moment in time. Turnover of staff is nothing new in recent years. We've had to face that. You know,
that's very hard, isn't it, Keith? Year in, year out, trying to rebuild.
Listen, we've lost 2-1. You know, had we won tonight and you asked me the same question, I can get after that a little bit more. We've lost, and so I'm responsible for recruitment at the club. I'm responsible for bringing new players in. Sometimes players leaving is outside of your control. A lot of the time it's outside of your control. So it is frustrating. Obviously, you're trying to build something, and year on year you have to try and you know, reinvent the wheel to a certain extent. You know, there's only so many players that go around the league, and you know, there's lots of different things. There's lots of reasons as to why. Ultimately, you know, we're working with the players that we have. We're working hard with the players that we have. They're short of a little bit of confidence just at this moment in time. It would have been a nice boost for them tonight to come off against Derry, like I said, who are a good side and you know, full of experienced players and lots of quality. You know, to come away with a point tonight, you know, would have been, you know, I think deserved for our overall performance, but it's undone by some poor defending, and ultimately, like I said, it's my responsibility for that.
That is Bohemians manager Keith Long. As he said in the clip, they actually played quite well initially, and then just, I suppose, Derry City's strength and depth kind of showed. But that is a 5th game without a win for Bohs, and they've only got one all season, and before they play Sligo on Tuesday. And Graham, when we look at the fixture list of what's coming up, there is an opportunity there to bounce back after the Sligo game in regards to the Drogheda United game away, which is going to be tough. Finn Harps away, always a tough trip, and then also, or Finn Harps at home, sorry, and then Shelburne away as well before the next derby. So they really need to get a win of some sort in that next 3 games.
Need to get a win by hook or by crook, really, at this stage. You could see, like you said, they perform so well in the first half, and then the first goal kills them, and then the momentum is all with Derry. Obviously, when Derry equalise, the momentum goes with them, and you can see them just dropping back further and further, and they're nearly trying to hold off and hold on to a 1-1 draw just to build something, just to have something that they can have in terms of a point. The last goal they conceded is really poor. I think that defensively they looked really poor. I thought the keeper might have done better with it as well when I look back on it. But like you said, he's just trying to get them together. I know he's under a lot of scrutiny at the moment, Keith, and like he touched on it himself. Very hard to keep doing what he's doing when he's losing that much quality. Not just quality in terms of the type of player he's losing, like that's going to higher levels, like Georgie Kelly and Ross Tierney, who are really high quality level players, but even characters like Buckley and Cornwall, who's left, who would have been leaders in that group. So to try and keep knitting them together every season to make sure that they're competitive all the time, it's a tough gig for them. And I feel for him a little bit, but I also know that there's a lot of Bohemians, people that want them to get better results, and I understand that as well. But again, what's key to do here when he keeps losing that amount of players every season?
Yeah, Paul, I suppose just on that point as well, though, on the flip side, I suppose Keith Long is probably his best place to kind of find the answers to problems, because he's been here before in terms of losing players, and he knows the circumstances of the club maybe than somebody coming in from outside. So really, it's just a case of them, I suppose, the squad sort of trusting in Keith and then just kind of working along with him, and eventually probably they will get out of this rut, especially once they get a bit of cohesion after a few games.
Yeah, 100%. And, some of the things that you might see going around social media about Keith Long and his job being under pressure is just absolutely ridiculous. It's just when Garth starts naming some of the players, I actually forgot one or two, like Tierney, who's actually gone, Andy Lyon's gone, Keith Ward has gone. Like when you take that number of players out of any squad, it's very difficult to continue to rebuild. And Keith Long has shown over the last 3, 4, 5 years that he's capable of doing that job. So he's absolutely the right man to get them going again. I think the game on Friday night is probably best summed up by the goal that they scored. They're having to work so hard to actually score a goal. The move was brilliant, the way they worked it through midfield. Then there was a lovely third man run and it was finished off really well. And then you look at the 2 goals that they've conceded, and it's just a bit of a soft ball into the box. Nobody's kind of commanding. They're not really high enough up the pitch sometimes to squeeze out of that space, and they're coughing up goals. And when you take Georgie Kelly out of the side, there's a massive gap there as well. I think they've only scored more than 1 goal on one occasion this season, and they've only kept 1 clean sheet. So you don't have to go very far to actually look at the areas that they need to improve. It's in both boxes. I've no doubt they'll get it right. It's a lot of new players that they're blooding together. It does just take maybe a graft or just maybe a not so sexy 3 points to just kickstart things for them. And once they do, I've no doubt that they'll start picking up points and moving up the table. Where they'll end up is hard to know, because you can't really see them challenging with the likes of a Derry or Shamrock Rovers this moment in time. But Keith Long is absolutely the man to turn that one around.
And Graham, I think they just need to look across at Shelbourne to see, like, once you're on a bad run, one result can really change the mood. And Shelbourne went and beat a really good Sligo Rovers team 1-0, Daniel Carr penalty. And again, it's like by hook or by crook. It doesn't really matter how it happens as long as you get the win. So from Damien Duff's perspective and for Shelbourne's perspective, after that difficult run of results, it was just a perfect result for them.
I think they just went and set out their stall and said, we're going to be difficult to beat here and not give up. They conceded 3 goals against Finn Harps, and you could tell, obviously, there was an international break then. And I'd say I know Joey O'Brien well enough to know that he would have been really upset about conceding 3 goals, and he would have probably got to work on them during them 2 weeks to make sure they were a little bit more well drilled, a little bit more decisive in terms of, like Paul said, about even in their own box and making sure they get to the ball and that early at the pitch. And they go to, I was actually down in Sligo on Saturday because they're under 14s were playing there, and we saw the pitch, and it is really poor. Like, it's a poor standard of pitch for the level it's on. So it's a great excuse probably to go and say, well, we're not going to try and play out too much here because there's no point to just putting yourself in trouble. So from that point of view, Shells just went down there, set out the stall, And going away and winning 1-0 from a defender's point of view is one of the best results you can get. It's great.
And Paul, those type of results, I suppose they can galvanise the squad as well when you especially when it's sort of a gritty win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say that defeat to Finn Harp sort of would have hurt them as well. And I probably not too surprised, to be honest with you, with how Shell's season has panned out. I kind of predicted that at the start of the season, that it'd be a bit of a mixed bag, that some weeks they'll produce and they'll perform and they'll have results, and other weeks it might just look like a bit of an experiment with what it is they're trying to do. I think what you will find is that they'll be very confident in their principles of how they want to play the game. I'm a big believer in what Duffer has done. I worked with him at Shamrock Rovers, and I think he's got really good vision of how he wants to play, but also not afraid to mix it up, like Gart said. And I'd say the pitch probably made up their mind on Friday night of how it is they were going to play. And it's a really, really strong result for Shells, and maybe something that could kickstart to pick up a couple of more points. But another side who you wouldn't really fear of being in danger. I think they'll get better as the season goes on, and what they will look to do over the next 6, 12, 18 months is just add 1 or 2 bodies in any window that they have and pick up from there. So a really good performance, a really good result, and it's certainly one that they can build on.
And Jim, from Sligo Rovers' perspective, I mean, yes, it's a defeat, but they've been on a great run at the start of this season. Maybe the only kind of blow there, we'll have to just see the extent of the injury, but Aidan Keena, who's the player of the month and who has been brilliant so far this season, we'll see how that goes. But there won't be any panic from Liam Buckley's point of view, just with the way they've started, and also they seem to have built a really good squad there.
Yeah, I don't think there will be any panic, but like last Friday, they were quite listless, though. I don't think they had a shot of note until the 82nd minute. So that would have been disappointing in front of their own fans. They have a chance to pick up, tomorrow night against Bohemians, and I think they're at home to the students at the weekend. So they'll be targeting 6 points. And if they get those 6 points, they'll be second or third in the table. But the injury to Keena, I don't know what the situation is, whether he'll be available to play tomorrow night. But if he was absent, that would be a big blow, So, they have other players in the squad like Adam McDonnell and Seamus Keogh, whether they can kind of step up and, get the goals or not, I don't know. But,
the New Zealand lad, Jim, Max Mata, he's the one that would come in.
Oh, sorry, yeah, that's him, yeah. I wouldn't be pushing the panic button yet, but Friday night was quite flat by all accounts.
Yeah,
and obviously as well, Raf, the pitch. I think they did get work done on it in the pre-season that they wanted to get done on it, and it tends to rain up in Sligo perhaps a bit more than it does on the east and south coast, and it's been raining heavy there for the last 24 hours as well. So. People have given out about the pitch. I think Stephen O'Donnell, the Dundalk manager, was quite critical of it when they played there back in February. So it's something that hopefully Sligo can get the surface in better nick.
Yeah, it definitely rains more in the northwest. I've grown up. I don't know. I can't quantify it, but it just always felt like up in Leitrim, like it just rains more than down here in Dublin. But anyway, as I said, I can't quantify that. I'm not really a weatherman. But Pats and Drogheda drew 1-1, and I could think we can just refer to this as the Tim Clancy derby, just with the managerial merry-go-round over the winter. Graham, I suppose from Pats' point of view, they're still in contention. Obviously, a draw maybe at home to Drogheda maybe doesn't look good on paper, but the fact is they came from behind and then managed to get a result. So it's not all bad.
Yeah, they've had a real indifferent start. I watched them in the President's Cup against Rovers, and I thought they were excellent on the day, really, really good. And then I think they win their first game away to Shelbourne, and then they lose the next two. And then they come back, they come roaring back with results where you think, oh, they're good. Again, if they can keep their main players fit, they've a really good chance. Lennon in the midfield with Forrester seems to be the one that if they can keep them two together, it's a really good midfield pairing. Doyle, the two Doyles, Mark Doyle has come in and hit the ground running from Drogheda. He looks exciting player off the left. Obviously, they lost Matty Smith, Burns and Billy King then. But it's about keeping their players fit as much as they can, because underneath that, I'm not sure what they have. I think it probably 13, 14 players that would be really high level, and then after that, it's a bit of a drop off. So it's about keeping as many players fit as they can. They look a little bit more of a goal threat this year, obviously with Doyle coming in up the front, Owen Doyle, than they were last season. I know they played Robbie Benson up there a couple of times. So they're going to score more goals, but I do think they probably concede goals as well. So some days they're going to win. Some weeks they're going to win, but I can't see them being consistent enough to be really a challenger at the moment. That would be where I think Doherty are a little bit more consistent on them, and I think Rovers are too.
Yeah, whereas Drogheda, Paul, I suppose at the start of the season, it looked a little bit worrying. So it just took a while for them to kind of get up and running. But starting with the Derby win over Dundalk, they just seem to have built a little bit of momentum that would give you a thought that maybe in terms of avoiding the drop, they have potential to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's 4 huge points now that they've picked up in those last 2 games. And I think the majority of us, if we were looking at that before they played, probably would have said that Dundalk could be Drogheda, and Pats would also pick up 3 points. So, that's a major confidence boost. And looking back, I only saw the highlights, but they created a number of chances within that game whereby they could have gone and scored again. So, you can see there's a bit of confidence in their play. You can see, listen, they've lost a number of players off the back of last season. That was expected with how well they've done. But that, particularly the Derby win against Dundalk, has obviously given them an extra level. And looking at the performance against Pats as well, it wasn't the case that it was one-way traffic. Yes, Pats were knocking on the door to get an equaliser like you would expect. But like I mentioned, there was chances there. The goal that they got was probably one where Pats would be particularly disappointed. It was really scrappy in their own box. I thought that the run wasn't tracked. Then there was probably 1 or 2 swipes to clear the ball, and Dale Rooney got on the end of it. And what Drogheda have shown is they've probably spread the goals around well amongst the team. They probably haven't got a number 9 who's going to bang in your 10, 15 goals a season, and that will also help. But for their kind of survival chances and looking up the table, the 4 points over the last 2 weeks last 2 match days will certainly give them confidence to do that.
Yeah, and talking about spreading out the goals, Shamrock Rovers, I think we've talked about that previously with them over the last few seasons. That seems to be the way for them. And Andy Lyons wasn't bought for goals, but a brace up at Finn Harps, Graham, especially the second goal, is real quality.
Yeah, second goal is really good. He probably had his best game the week before against Sligo when they were 2-0 down, and he came back into it, and he was the one player that sort of drove them forward, especially in the first half when they were losing 2-0. Second half, then he just went up to another gear. I think he got the penalty for them, and he ends up doing really well. And the goal he scores then up in the header is actually a really good header, very, very brave. And then the second goal is really good. He just plays a 1-2. Looks like he's going to go on the outside, but takes the run on the inside, and then he chops him and puts it away with his left foot. But he's you can tell he sort of took a while to settle in terms of getting used to playing as a wing back, which he probably hasn't done before. Then he's been playing off the left hand side. Last week against Sligo probably gave him a lot of confidence. To then he took that into the Finn Harps game, and he done really, really well. Shamrock Rovers played well in the game. They moved the ball well. They kept trying to play, controlled the game with the possession side of it, and because it's a tough place to go, Finn Harps. But I thought they were clinical when they got into the final third, and that was the difference.
Yeah, just on that point, Raf, and you say about Andy Lyons and maybe not signing for goals, but for me, the way Shamrock Rovers play and the fact that they own so much of the possession, I think those wing-back players can easily contribute 5-10 goals a season. They're the ones who are typically getting in behind back fours or back fives, and if it goes down one side, what you tend to find is if, say, Andy Lyons is playing right wing-back, it might be Neil Ferrugia coming in or around the back post, and they can absolutely contribute based on the way they play. And I think with Andy in particular, like Arts mentioned, he was playing in a 4 last year. The shackles are somewhat off him now. He's probably not going to have to do as much defending as he previously did at Bows. And that is somebody, and the fact that he got 2 last week, I wouldn't be surprised if he was to pick up another 5, 6, 7, 8 goals between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, and just on the final game of the weekend, Paul, in regards to Dundalk, what was expected a routine win over UCD. As I said, it's expected for Dundalk to win that game at home. But for UCD, I mean, they still haven't won this season, but their home form has actually been reasonably good in terms of picking up points, draws for the most part. But it doesn't look good for them, I suppose, in the long term, though, in terms of staying in the league. I mean, what's their perspective in terms of at least picking up a few points, picking up a few wins in these next few weeks?
Yeah, it's looking pretty ominous based on how the first round of fixtures have gone, that it's going to be a difficult season. even during my time at UCD, what you might find is they'll just throw a result out of nowhere. They'll beat somebody that you just won't expect it, because they'll perform on the day, and they have players. Everybody always tends to go with Whelan and Kerrigan, that if they produce, they can cause teams issues. It is a little worrying. You would like to see them maybe being a little more difficult to beat, and maybe get back to basics and just set up and maybe set up, and be that more of a solid foundation, and look to maybe at least grind out a result and do what Drogheda in particular have done over the last 2 match days, and try get a draw and maybe a win and go from there. The one extra bit on top of that is Whelan and Kerrigan. When it comes to the summer, are they going to be there? That's another 2 players that they could potentially lose from their starting 11. So it's a very difficult job. It always is. It's a young squad. The cream of the crop tend to move on to some of our bigger clubs or across the water, and you would fully expect that that's going to be the case again. But for the short term and over the next couple of weeks, it's you just got to be difficult to beat. Maybe don't be as open, don't be as expansive, get back to basics and try build from there.
Yeah, and the drop to the first division is what they're trying to avoid. But in terms of results in this weekend's first division, Galway United continuing their good start to the season with a 1-0 win over Cove Ramblers. Waterford, pre-season favourites, have dropped a few points now, but a 1-1 home draw with Longford Town. Wexford losing at home to Cork City, who are continuing to fly up at the top, and then Athlone Town and Bray Wanderers drawing 1-1. So as I said, Cork and Galway continuing to do well, but Waterford losing a little bit of ground. They're still in contention, and you'd still expect them with Ian Morris there to push on, Graham. But it's just it's a little bit interesting anyway that they seem to have just faltered a little bit in the last couple of games.
Yeah, a friend of mine was down watching them in pre-season and said that they had done really, really well. They looked like they were going to be the team to beat, and I fully expected with Ian going in there that they would have been. Cork have just been galvanised. I know Colin has been on and off as well at times with some personal issues, but I think it's galvanised the squad. He's made some good signs. He brought in the striker from Galway, who seems to be really good for them. Watched them play last year, I forget his second name now, but really good. And they seem to, like you said, they just have a bit of momentum at the moment. And Galway will be buoyed by the fact that, they've recently agreed a new investment as well, and the players are training. And I think even going back to the Bowls one, the likes of Galway and Cork are probably training in the mornings, and it's probably the one thing that Bohemians aren't doing at the minute. If you are going to maybe be probably a little bit critical of Bohemians, it would be that, are they giving their players a chance to be competitive by training in the mornings and having a proper schedule, like a full-time schedule, the way the likes of Galway are. But Galway are going to get a bit of an investment, and you can see them that they might start pushing in Caulfield. Paul touched on it as well. Caulfield knows when to turn the screw in terms of we need to be difficult to be here. We need to go and set out a stall and try and go and build into a game. And I think Galway are comfortable with John doing that in certain games, and then other games they're just going to go and blitz teams at home. So it makes for an intrigue. I do think it's a 3-horse race. I do think it's between Cork, Galway and Waterford, but I'd imagine Waterford will come at some stage.
Yeah, and the Women's National League, I think, was also viewed as a 3-horse race with Shelburne, Peamount and Wexford, but a few results have thrown that into doubt. And also there was the case, Jim, of the ineligible player. So the opening day game between Peamount and Sligo Rovers, a historic game for Sligo Rovers, where it was their first game in the league, lost 6-0 at Peamount. That was sort of expected anyway, because just how strong Peamount are, and this is Sligo's first game. But what has happened, Peamount fielded an ineligible player, just to get that word out, and that has been turned into a 3-0 result for Sligo. So Sligo have made a reasonably good start, actually, even if you take that kind of result away, Jim.
Yeah, I think they had a couple of defeats after that, but then I think they went down to Cork, and on Saturday last, they defended quite well, and I think they were stunned by a late goal. So the extra 3 points will push them up the table a couple of places. Hopefully, the start they've made, a lot of players from around the region playing for them, particularly players from Donegal. I'd be hopeful that they can at least maybe finish second or third from bottom. That wouldn't be a bad start, for the first year in. Because there was kind of, I know people were very excited in the club to have the women's team involved this year, but they did realise Steve Feedy, probably the manager, realising that, things were going to be tough. But I think they've made a better than expected start to the campaign, albeit now helped by those extra 3 points that they thought they wouldn't get.
The amount in terms of on the pitch, anyway, they had a huge 4-0 win over Wexford, who were expected to be in title contention. So in terms of them still being title favourites, I think that's not going to change. And then elsewhere, on Saturday, then Treaty United lost 2-0 at home to Galway. Cork City got a valuable 2-1 win over Bohemians. And then, as you mentioned, Sligo Rovers just missed out against the reigning champion Shelburne. So that was an away trip, 1-0 defeat. So that's there's no shame in that, especially when you look at the disparity between the teams. But this weekend, anyway, in terms of fixtures in the Premier Division, we do have midweek games this week. So UCD and Derry City. That's tonight, and it's a rescheduled game. And then Finn Harps against Drogheda United, and then on Tuesday, as we've mentioned before, Sligo Rovers versus Bohemians. And we do have a TV game on Friday, so St. Pat's versus Dundalk, which we can refer to as the Stephen O'Donnell Derby. So that is at 7:45 at Richmond Park. And then Shelburne against Shamrock Rovers, that's going to be intriguing. At the same time, Drogheda United against Bohemians. And then on Saturday, Finn Harps against Derry City, so a Northwest Derby there. And then Sligo Rovers at home to UCD. And then in the first division, Treaty United are up against Athlone Town tonight. And then Bray Wanderers are up against Treaty United on Friday. Cove Ramblers against Waterford, also on Friday at 7:45, both of them. And then Saturday, Galway United against Wexford, and then Longford Town against Athlone Town. But before we go, there's matters across the other side of the Irish Sea. So first off, Matt Doherty scoring for Spurs in a 5-1 win over Newcastle United. And then Chiedozie Ogbene also finding the target for Rotherham United in the Football League trophy, or it's to give it its actual current name, the Papa John's trophy, which just sounds kind of weird to say. But Rotherham United beating Sutton United in extra time, a great goal as well. I suppose, Graham, to start off with Matt Doherty, he's been in brilliant form prior to the international break, and he just seems to have carried it on. And I saw him talking about the difficult time he had under Jose Mourinho when he was being left out of match day squads, and it's a world away from that. And I suppose it goes back to what Paul was saying about Andy Lyons, like the shackles being taken off, that whole kind of, wing backs under Antonio Conte being given license to get forward and get in amongst the goals.
Yeah, and I think Matt Doherty gave a simple answer, didn't he? He said, I need to be at the back post defending when I need to be, and I need to be at the opposition's back post when we're attacking. And it's a simple message, but it's a hard thing to do because it's a good 120-yard run, that, So the fact that he has the fitness, but also the mental strength to want to do it, I think he's shown great patience and maturity here, because when Mourinho obviously didn't treat him well and left him on the bus and things like that, and Joe Ledley came to him and said, you're not going to be in the squad, and there was kids in ahead of him, it's easy for the player, and your pride kicks in to go, I'm not having this, or I'm going to walk. And he didn't. He stayed with it. When Nuno came in then, who would have worked him at Wolves, he probably would have thought, I'm okay here, I have a manager here who knows me, and then he didn't play him. But he showed great maturity, and obviously Conte's taken to him and pushed him. We were saying afterwards that maybe he needs that type of manager, that someone's on him all the time to make sure he's watching him and pushing him all the time. But Spurs were excellent yesterday, really, really good. His contribution was brilliant to the game. He set up one, and he was in at the back post to score off a Hurricane cross that they all missed. Son missed as well, and then he's just opportunistic, and he's in at the back post. And he's playing out of position for 70 minutes of the game as well. He played as a left wing back, so he's willing to do a job for the team, and I think that's why Conte likes him, in that he's willing to put the team first. So it was a great weekend for Matt Doherty in that sense.
Yeah, and putting the team first, that's something I think Chiedozie Ogbene has also been praised for, in terms of being willing to take up different positions. He obviously normally plays as a right wing back for Rotherham, and for Ireland then plays a bit further forward, but seems to have adapted. I suppose, Paul, as we were talking to Stephen Elliott last week, he was saying that he kind of saw him being like potentially able to play a couple of levels above, potentially even Premier League clubs could be looking at him. But let's say if Rotherham United were to get promoted and they're in a reasonably good position in League One and they do go up to the Championship, is it better for him to stay exactly where he is, or should he entertain offers, say if a Premier League club comes in, but then there's the risk of potentially game time not being as I suppose, as guaranteed as it would be at Rotherham.
Yeah, I mean, that jump from League One to Premier League is monumental. And to go from playing for Rotherham week in, week out to maybe expecting to get minutes in the Premier League, for me, is unrealistic. And, it's maybe looking at what's the next step up the ladder. The thing with Rotherham that you would say, Raf, is they tend to be a bit of a yo-yo club between the Championship and League One. And maybe his next move is that he needs to get into maybe a more established Championship side, one that's maybe looking to fight for playoffs or promotion. And that, for me, would be a realistic next step for him. I think what he's shown with the international team is that he has the potential to go up a gear and playing the likes of a Belgium or a Portugal. He's shown that he can absolutely mix it. And he's one of those players that, Stephen Kenny, when he's gone in and when he's been at the likes of Dundalk, it tends to be those attacking players that really tend to flourish and tend to get that extra bit of confidence in their game. And you can see that with Chiedozie. And you just have to look at the strike yesterday. It's maybe something that another player might just look to shift out wide and maybe then join in and get in the box. But he's just got out of his feet, and you can see that he has so much confidence in his game at the moment that he's just able to let rip, and he caught it really sweetly. And, at that stage of the game, it was enough to go on and win it. So for me, yes, he has shown that he's capable. To do it week in, week out is probably the next step at a higher level. Premier League is too big a step for me. It's looking, okay, where's the next step within the Championship potentially, if that is going to be a move away.
Yeah, and in terms of the highest level you can get in the Premier League, obviously there's a huge game on Sunday at 4:30, which is Manchester City versus Liverpool, both of them in Champions League action, and then they do meet again in the FA Cup 6 days later. So it's kind of intriguing. City having a 1-point lead after both teams won 2-0 at the weekend against Watford and Burnley, respectively. But Graham, I suppose when we're coming into this fixture on Sunday, the momentum seems to be with Liverpool. I mean, they've won their last 10 league games and barely conceded, I think 2 goals conceded, 8 clean sheets, whereas City have probably had the more recent drop-off of the two.
Yeah, if you can call it that, it's just a ridiculous pace these two teams are setting at the minute. It's scary. Liverpool have actually probably... When you reel off them stats that you said there, it's phenomenal, but they've been probably giving up chances, and there's been a couple of games where they haven't really performed, and that's the scary bit. But for some reason, in these games, Liverpool tend to perform. And they knocked Man City out of Champions League a couple of years ago over 2 legs, and they absolutely blitzed them. And it was the one time that I probably seen Guardiola restrict his fullbacks a little bit, because I even watched the documentary when he spoke about it. He said the front three of Liverpool really scared him because they played in them channels on the inside of the centre backs on the outside of the centre backs, on the inside of the fullbacks. So it was one of those comments that stuck with me, that he says he's worried about the front three, and I think he pulls his fullbacks in a little bit. But Man City have some unbelievable players. The game at Anfield was brilliant. 2-2. Foden was the difference for Man City on the day. It just makes for an intriguing game, because I think City probably have the easier to run in terms of the fixtures that they have, but with the form that Liverpool are on, it just feels like they're going to run over everybody by hook or by crook. Whether they play well or not, they're going to find a way to win, and that, I think, that comes with more experience, and they have an authority about them now that the likes of Van Dijk, Fabinho, Henderson, they make sure that the team don't drop off in the small little details of their appetite, their hunger, their attitude, that they're relentless. But Man City are a fantastic team. They're a wonderful unit. They're machine-like, and that they just keep rolling, keep moving the ball, don't change things too much. So it makes for an intriguing game on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Paul, in terms of the way the forward lines will be named, because obviously Liverpool, with Luis Diaz coming in, they've a few more options now. So the front three that we would have been talking about 2 or 3 years ago, there are other. Jota has obviously come in as well and really kind of staked his claim. Firmino's probably dropped off that little bit. For Liverpool, how do you expect Klopp to go in terms of that front three, and which of the 5 he selects?
Yeah, it's a good question, because what Klopp has done really well is he shuffled the pack over the last kind of weeks and months in order to keep people fresh. I think the one thing that has probably hurt Man City, and Graham's touched on it there, is pace. And I'd be very surprised if Salah and Mane aren't just givens that they'll start, and it's probably the one that goes with them. I personally think Jota should play. I think he just coughs up goals from chances that you probably don't see a chance being. He's good with his head. He can run in behind. And the legs are the one thing that cause City problems. And what you probably would expect is that Liverpool will be happy enough for Man City to have, by and large, the majority of the possession at the Etihad and then go to counter-attack. And what better three to go and counter-attack with? And Jota's in good form. He's scoring goals. I was looking at a stat in the weekend, and Salah's scored 20 league goals already this year, which is crazy because he's at sometimes goes under the radar. And then Mane has always caused problems. So that's the three I would expect Liverpool to go with. I did hear a stat in the weekend. I think it was that Liverpool have only won 1 of their last 10 at the Etihad. And a draw actually might be enough for City with the form they're in. And you look at the run in, you think outside of that Liverpool game, they probably don't look like they'll lose or draw a game. So, listen, it's an amazing spectacle. The run-in's going to be huge. The FA Cup game they have against each other, the Champions League, who's to say they won't go on to the final in that competition, both sides. So for the league, with 8 games left, it's a huge game to look forward to.
Yeah, just a bit shot. Yeah, sorry, go on, Jim.
Yeah, back in the 2018-19 season, I think both Liverpool and City won their last 12 games. I think Sunday is going to decide it, because I think the winner, even if City even were to get a draw, but I think definitely the winner on Sunday is then capable of winning all their remaining 7 games. And definitely City's running is a lot easier, because I'm just looking at Liverpool's running here. They've got Man United on the 19th of April. I know they're out of sorts, Man United, but it could be the type of game that they could go to Anfield and get something out of. How poor or how average they've been. Liverpool also have got Aston Villa, where the Steven Gerrard influence there, and then they've got Spurs at home on the 3rd last game of the season. Spurs, could be pushing really hard to cement that 4th spot as well. So I do think Sunday could be the start of a very, very exciting trilogy that could end with Liverpool and City meeting in Paris on the 28th of May in the Champions League final as well.
Yeah, but before that, both of them have Champions League action on Tuesday.
That's right.
City against Atletico and Liverpool against Benfica. But I suppose, Jim, they're kind of used. I suppose both clubs are at that point where they are used to, the interruption of midweek games anyway. So it shouldn't really have an impact.
No, I mean, Liverpool and City play on Tuesday, and I think it's 5 days then to the game on Sunday. So, but then they've got the second legs in 3 days later, and then 3 days later the cup match. I think Liverpool's Champions League game against Benfica is the easier one. City going to Atletico, that could be a bit tougher. All right, I think.
Yeah, and the Champions League, which is going to be live as always on Tuesday on RTÉ2 and the RTÉ Player. So that is there to look forward to. And also, as I said earlier, the TV game in the League of Ireland this Friday, it is St. Pat's versus Dundalk. So 7:30 on Friday. So another one to look forward to. But Jim, thanks for coming on, and also best of luck with your play as well.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, and Graham and Paul, thanks a mil for coming on. And we've a lot of fixtures to look forward to, and obviously a World Cup in 6 months, more than 6 months now, 7 months. It should be in normal circumstances 2 months away, but unfortunately circumstances dictate we have to wait a little bit longer than usual this time. But anyway, lads, thanks a mil for coming on.
Okay, thanks, Raph.